The year was 1876, and death came on swift hooves across Whispering Valley. 12-year-old Sarah Mitchell lay perfectly still beneath her mother's body, the warmth fading with each passing minute. She didn't cry. She didn't breathe more than shallow whispers. She just counted heartbeats as war cries and horse hooves thundered around what remained of their wagon train. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 23 settlers had left Pine Creek settlement 3 days prior. Now only Sarah remained, playing a desperate game of stillness, while her family's blood soaked into her calico dress. But something extraordinary was about to happen. A Kiowa medicine man named Eagle Feather would sense the spirit of a child hiding among the dead, and his decision would change the course of both their lives forever. Pine Creek Settlement sat nestled between rolling plains and the distant Thunder Ridge Mountains, a collection of wooden structures defying the wilderness around them. In the spring of 1876, it was home to just over 300 souls, most having arrived within the last decade, seeking land, opportunity, and escape from the lingering shadows of the Civil War. The Mitchell family had been among the first settlers, establishing a modest but thriving farm on the northeastern edge of town. Thomas Mitchell stood 6 feet tall, with shoulders broad from years of fieldwork and hands that told stories of perseverance. His wife Rebecca ran their household with quiet efficiency, known throughout the settlement for her herbal remedies and the way she could stretch meager supplies through the harshest winters. Their children, Sarah, 12, and Daniel, 8, had known no other home than the 2-room cabin, with its stone chimney and the surrounding acres of wheat and corn. Sarah was a thoughtful child, with chestnut hair often falling loose from hastily tied ribbons, and eyes that seemed to take in more than they revealed. Unlike many girls her age, she preferred helping her father with the livestock to indoor tasks. Much to her mother's resigned amusement, she had an uncanny connection with animals, especially the family's old mare, Willow, who followed her like a faithful dog. "That girl speaks horse better than English," Thomas would joke to neighbors, pride evident beneath his weathered features. Life in Pine Creek followed the rhythms of seasons and necessity. The 1-room schoolhouse hosted lessons during winter months when fieldwork slowed. The general store doubled as the post office, with mail arriving once weekly if weather and road conditions permitted. The church bell marked Sundays and occasionally rang out warnings or celebrations. It was during the spring gathering of 1876 that Mayor William Taylor announced plans for a larger settlement 50 miles west, closer to the territorial capital. "Land's being parceled," he explained to the gathered families, "and those registering. First we'll have prime selection. The government's offering special considerations to established families willing to relocate." A murmur rippled through the crowd. For some, Pine Creek had been a temporary stop on a longer journey. For others, like the Mitchells, it had become home. That evening, the conversation around the Mitchell dinner table was unusually somber. "The soil there is richer," Thomas said, slicing his bread carefully. "Fewer rocks to clear, better access to markets." Rebecca's hands stilled over her mending. "We've made something here, Thomas, started from nothing. And we'll take that knowledge with us," he replied. "Daniel's growing. Sarah too. They'll need more than what Pine Creek can offer." Sarah listened silently, studying her parents' faces. She could read the weight behind her father's words, the careful calculations of a man perpetually balancing today's certainty against tomorrow's promise. She saw, too, the resignation in her mother's eyes, the quiet acceptance that had carried Rebecca through previous moves and hardships. Later that night, Sarah slipped out to the barn, pressing her face against Willow's warm neck. "We'll be leaving soon," she whispered, "but I won't let them leave you behind." The following weeks brought preparations for the journey. Thomas sold portions of their livestock, but kept the wagon horses and Sarah's beloved Willow. Rebecca preserved food, packed linens, and carefully wrapped the family Bible containing pressed flowers from every significant occasion of their married life. Daniel approached the move with a child's excitement, peppering every adult with questions about their destination. Sarah maintained a watchful silence, helping where needed but spending extra hours with Willow as if storing up memories. 23 settlers ultimately decided to join the wagon train to the new settlement. 5 families, including the Mitchells, 3 unmarried men seeking prosperity, an elderly couple following their only son, and Reverend Hoffman, who claimed divine guidance had instructed him to minister to the new community. The morning of departure came with surprising warmth for early May. Sarah stood beside the loaded wagon, watching Pine Creek settlement emerge from dawn shadows. The familiar shapes of buildings, the windmill's silhouette against lightning sky, the path to her friend Emma's house, all seemed suddenly precious in their ordinariness. "It's just land we're leaving, Sarah," her mother said softly, appearing beside her. "Home is what we carry with us." Sarah nodded, unable to explain the heaviness in her chest. At 12, she lacked words for presentiment, for the inexplicable sense that something fundamental was shifting beyond the obvious change of location. Rebecca placed a small leather pouch in Sarah's hand. "I made this for you. Lavender and sage. Keep it in your pocket for the journey." Sarah clutched it tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of her mother's herbs. "Thank you, Mama." The wagon train departed with little ceremony. A few townsfolk waved from doorways. Mayor Taylor delivered a brief speech about courage and opportunity. And then the wheels were turning, creating distance with each rotation. Sarah perched on the wagon seat beside her father for the first miles, watching Pine Creek recede until it disappeared completely behind a gentle rise in the land. Thomas Mitchell guided the horses with experienced hands, occasionally pointing out landmarks or explaining their route. By midday, Sarah had retreated into the wagon's interior, sitting beside Daniel as he napped against their mother's side. The first 3 days passed without incident. The weather held fair, the trail remained passable, and the travelers maintained steady progress. Evenings brought the wagons into protective circles, with cook fires burning and conversations drifting. Between preparations for their new home and memories of the ones left behind. On the 3rd night, Sarah sat slightly apart from the others, leaning against a wagon wheel and staring at the heavens. The vastness of the star-filled sky made her feel impossibly small. "You're the quiet one, aren't you?" Sarah startled at the voice. Reverend Hoffman stood nearby, his tall frame silhouetted against firelight. "Just thinking, sir," she replied. "About what troubles that young heart?" he asked, lowering himself beside her with a sigh that spoke of aging joints. Sarah considered the question. "Do you think places remember people, Reverend? Once we're gone from somewhere, does anything of us stay behind?" The Reverend's eyebrows raised slightly. "That's quite a thought for someone your age." He gazed upward at the stars. "Scripture tells us we're but dust, and to dust we shall return. But I've often wondered if each life doesn't leave some impression on this world, like footprints in mud that harden into stone." Sarah nodded, finding unexpected comfort in the image. "Are you afraid of what lies ahead?" he asked gently. "No," she answered, surprising herself with the truth of it. "I'm not afraid of what's coming, she struggled to articulate the feeling. "Just aware of what's being lost," he finished for her. "Yes, sir, exactly that." The Reverend patted her shoulder as he rose. "That awareness is a gift, Sarah Mitchell. Most people rush forward so eagerly they never fully know what they're leaving behind." Sarah pondered his words as she watched him return to the fireside gathering. Around her, the night sounds of the prairie created a gentle symphony. Insects, chirping, the occasional snort from tethered horses, the crackle of burning wood. In the distance, a coyote called, its mournful cry echoing across the empty landscape. Later, curled beneath blankets in the wagon beside her sleeping brother, Sarah whispered into darkness, "Remember us, Pine Creek. Remember we were there." The morning of the fourth day dawned with unusual stillness. No birdsong greeted the rising sun. No breeze stirred the tall grasses surrounding their campsite. Thomas Mitchell noticed it first, pausing in his breakfast preparations to scan the horizon with narrowed eyes. "Best get moving quickly," he told the other men, his voice deliberately casual. "Good traveling weather shouldn't be wasted." Sarah observed her father's tense shoulders as he harnessed the horses, the way his gaze repeatedly swept the surrounding terrain. When he lifted her onto the wagon seat instead of letting her walk alongside as she'd done previous mornings, she didn't protest. "Stay close today," was all he said, pressing his old hunting knife into her hands. "Keep this in your pocket." By mid-morning they had entered Whispering Valley, a long stretch of grassland flanked by low, rocky ridges. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The wagons moved in tighter formation than previous days, with Thomas and two other men occasionally riding ahead to scout the path. "Why's everyone so quiet?" Daniel asked, fidgeting beside their mother inside the wagon. Rebecca pulled him closer. "Sometimes quiet is good, Daniel. Helps us listen better." Sarah, still perched beside her father, understood what wasn't being said. She had grown up on frontier stories, on warnings about territories where settlers and native tribes clashed over land and resources. She recognized the vigilance in her father's posture, the same alertness he showed during thunderstorms or when unknown riders approached their farm. The attack came shortly after noon, when the sun stood highest and shadows disappeared beneath wagons and horses. Later, survivors would debate whether signs had been missed or if the ambush had simply been too well planned to detect. What no one disputed was its ferocity and swiftness. The first arrow struck the lead wagon's canvas, followed immediately by war cries echoing from the ridge to their left. Thomas Mitchell reacted instantly, shoving Sarah off the seat. "Under the wagon! Now!" he shouted, reaching for his rifle. Sarah hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. Around her, chaos erupted in a cacophony of sounds. Horses screaming, women calling for children, men shouting commands that dissolved into desperate warnings. She rolled beneath the wagon as instructed, pressing herself against the earth. From this position, she could see only fragments of the unfolding horror, running feet, falling bodies, blood spattering. On wagon wheels, she covered her ears against the gunshots and screams, squeezing her eyes shut when the first riders swept past, their painted bodies and fierce expressions burning into her memory despite her closed lids. Minutes stretched into an eternity of terror. Sarah remained motionless, remembering her father's lessons about hiding from danger. Sometimes stillness is your only defense. Animals understand this. Humans forget. A woman's scream cut through the diminishing gunfire. Her mother's voice. Sarah's eyes flew open in time to see Rebecca Mitchell running toward their wagon. Daniel clutched in her arms. An arrow protruded from her shoulder, but she continued forward, her face a mask of maternal determination. Rebecca reached the wagon and thrust Daniel beneath it beside Sarah. "Don't move," she gasped. "No matter what happens, don't..." Her words ended abruptly as a second arrow struck, this one finding her back. Rebecca collapsed beside the wagon, one arm still extended toward her children. "Mama!" Daniel cried, starting to crawl toward her. "No!" Sarah hissed, grabbing her brother and pulling him back. "We have to stay hidden!" But Daniel was beyond reason, thrashing against her hold with the strength of panic. He broke free, scrambling toward their fallen mother. He never reached her. A passing rider spotted the movement and wheeled his horse around. The tomahawk fell once, and Daniel Mitchell lay still beside his mother. Sarah bit her hand to keep from screaming, tasting blood as her teeth broke skin. Through tear-blurred vision, she watched as a warrior dismounted near her mother's body. He wore a headdress more elaborate than the others, his chest covered with painted symbols. He examined Rebecca briefly before barking orders to the others. The attack was ending now, the initial violence giving way to methodical looting of the wagons. Sarah remained frozen, willing herself to become invisible beneath the wooden structure that had been their home for 4 days. She heard heavy footsteps approaching and recognized her father's boots, now moving with a stumbling gait. Thomas Mitchell fell to his knees beside his wife and son, a crimson stain spreading across his shirt. His hands reached out, touching Rebecca's face with terrible gentleness. He didn't cry out or speak. He simply knelt there, swaying slightly, until another arrow ended his vigil. As the sun continued its journey across the sky, Sarah Mitchell lay in perfect stillness beneath her family's wagon. When the warriors began moving among the dead, she watched through slitted eyes as they collected weapons and valuables. When one approached her mother's body, Sarah held her breath. The warrior bent down, turning Rebecca over. Sarah could now see her mother's face, peaceful despite the violence that had claimed her. With deliberate movements, the warrior lifted Rebecca's body and dropped it directly over the spot where Sarah hid. And there, beneath her mother's protective weight, Sarah remained as horses departed and silence reclaimed Whispering Valley. The sun began its descent, painting the scene in golden light that belied the day's atrocities. Sarah counted heartbeats, refusing to move until she could be certain no threat remained. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Sarah shivered beneath her mother's body, unwilling to emerge from concealment, but increasingly aware of thirst and the limits of her endurance. The night stretched before her, filled with unfamiliar sounds that sent fresh currents of fear through her exhausted frame. Around midnight, voices drifted across the massacre site, not the war cries from earlier, but softer tones, speaking a language Sarah didn't understand. Flickering torchlight illuminated portions of the ground near her hiding place. She pressed herself harder against the earth, willing even her breathing to become imperceptible. The voices came closer. Through the narrowest opening of her eyelids, Sarah saw moccasined feet moving slowly among the dead. These warriors moved differently than the attack party, examining bodies with what seemed like reverence rather than seeking plunder. One pair of feet stopped directly beside her mother. Sarah watched as the figure knelt down, placing a hand on Rebecca's back. The touch seemed gentle, almost respectful. Then, to Sarah's horror, the figure spoke words that caused others to approach. Hands grasped Rebecca's body, beginning to lift it away, removing Sarah's concealment. In that moment of exposure, with nowhere left to hide, Sarah made the only choice available. She closed her eyes completely, relaxed her limbs, and surrendered to the appearance of death. A silence fell. Sarah felt the weight of gazes upon her, imagined warriors staring down at the blood-soaked child lying motionless beside the wagon. She waited for rough hands or the final strike that would reunite her with her family. Instead, she heard a single voice, older, deeper than the others, speaking words that seemed to carry authority. A shadow fell across her closed eyelids. As someone bent closer, Sarah fought against the instinct to flinch when fingers touched her forehead. The touch lingered, warm against her cold skin. The voice spoke again, softer now, almost a chant. Sarah maintained her death-like stillness through sheer force of will, even as she sensed other figures gathering around her. The chanting continued, rising and falling in rhythmic patterns. Then, without warning, the man switched to broken English. "I know you live, child spirit," he said quietly. "Your heart speaks to mine." Sarah's resolve crumbled. Her eyes flew open, meeting the weathered face of an elderly native man leaning over her. His expression showed neither triumph nor threat, only a profound weariness that matched her own. "Those who did this," he continued, gesturing at the devastation surrounding them, "are not my people, though they share our blood. I am Eagle Feather, medicine man of Kiowa, who follow peace path." Sarah remained silent, calculating her chances if she attempted to run. As if reading her thoughts, Eagle Feather shook his head. "No escape for lone child in night prairie. Wolves and coyotes hunt, other bands roam." He straightened, addressing the warriors behind him. After a brief exchange, he turned back to Sarah. "You come. We take to White Doctor at trading post. You live." Sarah found her voice, cracked and small after hours of silence. "My family." Eagle Feather's expression softened. "All journey to spirit world now. Cannot help them. Can help you." Sarah looked at her mother's still form, at her father and brother lying nearby. Everything she had ever known or loved lay destroyed around her. The knife her father had given her that morning pressed against her hip, a final connection to the life that had ended hours ago. "Why would you help me?" she whispered. Eagle Feather was silent for a long moment. "Great Spirit speaks through children," he finally answered. "You survived when others fell. This means your path continues." He offered his hand. "Come now, or stay with dead." Sarah Mitchell, 12 years old and suddenly alone in the world, made the second most difficult choice of that terrible day. She reached out and placed her small hand in the medicine man's weathered palm. As Eagle Feather helped her stand, on legs numb from hours of immobility, Sarah caught one final glimpse of her family in the torchlight. She committed their faces to memory, knowing instinctively that this moment would forever divide her life into before and after. Eagle Feather wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and guided her away from the massacre site, toward horses waiting at the valley's edge. Sarah didn't look back again. She understood, with a wisdom beyond her years, that whatever path lay ahead would require her to face forward. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars she had contemplated just 24 hours earlier while speaking with Reverend Hoffman about leaving impressions on the world. Now she walked beneath them, a solitary survivor carrying the memories of 22 settlers who would never reach their destination. Eagle Feather lifted her onto his horse and mounted behind her. As they rode away from Whispering Valley, Sarah clutched the leather pouch her mother had given her, inhaling the fading scent of lavender and sage. In that moment, Rebecca's words returned to her. "Home is what we carry with us." Sarah Mitchell closed her eyes and held tight to that truth as Whispering Valley receded behind them, becoming the place where one life had ended and another, as yet unwritten, had somehow begun. The journey from Whispering Valley to Riverstone trading post took 3 days. Eagle Feather's small band traveled primarily at night, avoiding open terrain during daylight hours. Sarah rode silently, her body molded against the medicine man's as exhaustion and shock dulled her awareness of time passing. When they stopped to rest, she accepted water and small portions of dried meat without comment or resistance. Speech seemed beyond her capacity, as if the girl who once conversed with horses and dreamed beneath stars had been buried alongside her family. Eagle Feather maintained a respectful distance, offering necessities without demanding interaction. The 4 warriors accompanying them cast occasional glances in Sarah's direction, not unkind, but wary, as though she carried contagious misfortune. Only a young warrior named Running Fox approached her directly, kneeling beside her during their second evening and wordlessly offering a small wooden carving of a bird. Sarah accepted it with the same blank-faced compliance that had characterized her every movement since leaving Whispering Valley. When she slept, nightmares stalked her relentlessly. She would wake gasping, tears streaming down her face, unable to vocalize the horrors replaying behind her eyelids. During one such awakening, she found Eagle Feather sitting nearby, his weathered features illuminated by moonlight. "Dreams walk strong now," he said quietly. "Spirits of loved ones calling, but you must stay here in living world." Sarah stared at him, her silence no longer passive but deliberate, a fortress wall against further loss. Eagle Feather sighed. "I had daughter once, near your age when fever took her." He touched the leather medicine pouch hanging from his neck. "Her name meant sunrise in our tongue. She too spoke more with her silence than others with many words." Something in his tone, the unveiled grief perhaps, penetrated Sarah's protective numbness. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. "My name is Sarah." Eagle Feather nodded as if receiving sacred knowledge. "Sarah," he repeated, carefully. "Good name, strong name." They arrived at Riverstone Trading Post near dusk on the third day. The outpost consisted of several rough-hewn buildings clustered around a central clearing. The trading house itself, a livery stable, what appeared to be rudimentary lodgings, and two larger cabins set slightly apart. A stockade fence surrounded the compound, with armed men patrolling its perimeter. Eagle Feather halted their party several hundred yards from the gate. "White men here trade with all tribes," he explained to Sarah. "But after raid, hearts may have turned against Kiowa. Faces I cannot enter." Sarah felt a flicker of panic at the thought of separation from her unlikely protector. Eagle Feather seemed to sense her distress. "Doctor, there is good man, Harrison, treats Indian and white the same. His woman too has kind heart." "You're leaving me," Sarah stated flatly. Eagle Feather shook his head. "Not leaving. Waiting." He pointed to a stand of cottonwood trees visible beyond the trading post. 3 days I watch from there. Make sure White Doctor keeps you safe. If not..." He let the implication hang unfinished. Sarah clutched the wooden bird Running Fox had given her, its smooth surface a tangible anchor in this shifting reality. What if they blame me for surviving when others didn't? The medicine man's eyes held hers steadily. "Truth is shield, Sarah. Tell what happened. Some will listen." He lifted her from the horse and set her gently on the ground. From a pouch at his waist, he withdrew a small object wrapped in soft deerskin. "Take this. Keep close always." He placed it in her hand. "Medicine against dark spirits that follow those who walk from death." Sarah unwrapped the bundle to reveal a small stone amulet, polished to a deep blue sheen and etched with unfamiliar symbols. A thin leather cord threaded through a hole in its center. "What does it mean?" she asked, running her finger over the etched patterns. "Means you chosen to live when death came close," Eagle Feather replied. "Now go. Doctor's house has green door. Tell him Eagle Feather sends child who walked between worlds." Sarah hesitated, suddenly afraid to leave this man who had pulled her from beneath her mother's body and carried her away from annihilation. "Will I see you again?" Eagle Feather's face remained impassive, but something in his eyes softened. "Paths that cross once often find way back to each other. Now go before night falls completely." Sarah tied the amulet around her neck, tucking it beneath her blood-stained dress. She took one step toward the trading post, then another. When she looked back after the 10th step, Eagle Feather and his warriors had already melted into the gathering shadows. The approach to Riverstone Trading Post seemed endless. Sarah concentrated on placing one foot before the other, aware of her ragged appearance. Her once blue dress stiffened with dried blood, her hair matted, face smudged with dirt and tear tracks. As she neared the gate, shouts rang out from the watchtower. "Rider coming! No, wait! It's a child, a girl!" The gate swung open as Sarah stumbled the final yards. Strong arms caught her as her legs finally surrendered to exhaustion. She looked up into the bearded face of a stranger. "My God," the man breathed. "Where did you come from, child?" Sarah tried to form words, to deliver Eagle Feather's message, but darkness swept over her vision as consciousness slipped away. She awoke to unfamiliar sensations, softness beneath her body, the scent of soap and herbs, cool cloth on her forehead. A woman's face hovered above her, framed by graying hair pulled into a severe bun. Kind eyes examined her with professional concern. "There you are," the woman said softly. "We were beginning to worry." Sarah blinked, taking in her surroundings. She lay in a narrow bed in a small but tidy room. Sunlight filtered through curtained windows, suggesting at least one night had passed since her arrival. "I'm Emma Harrison," the woman continued. "My husband Robert is the doctor here. Can you tell me your name?" "Sarah Mitchell," she whispered, her throat painfully dry. Mrs. Harrison helped her sip water from a tin cup. "Sarah, that's lovely. Do you remember how you came to be at our gate?" Memories flooded back. The massacre, her mother's body shielding her, Eagle Feather's rescue. Sarah clutched at her neck, relieved to find the blue stone amulet still there. "There was an attack," she managed. "Our wagon train. They killed everyone." Emma Harrison's expression tightened with sorrow and something like recognition. "The Whitman Creek party. Headed for the new settlement?" At Sarah's nod, she closed her eyes briefly. "We'd heard rumors. A hunting party found evidence, but no survivors." "I hid," Sarah said, the words emerging in a rush. "Under the wagon, then under my mother when she fell. They didn't see me." "And how did you find your way here? It's nearly 30 miles from Whitman Creek to Riverstone." Sarah hesitated, unsure how these settlers would react to her association with Kiowa tribesmen. Eagle Feather's words returned to her. "Truth is shield. A medicine man found me. Eagle Feather. He said I was chosen to live when death came close." Mrs. Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly, but her voice remained gentle. "Eagle Feather brought you here?" Sarah nodded. "He said to tell Dr. Harrison that he sends a child who walked between worlds." A shadow crossed the woman's features. "My husband will want to hear this himself. Are you strong enough to see him?" Before Sarah could answer, the door opened to admit a tall man with spectacles perched on a prominent nose. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms, corded with lean muscle. Our mystery girl awakens," he said, approaching the bed. "I'm Dr. Harrison, though I suspect Emma has already made introductions." "She remembers Robert," Mrs. Harrison said quietly. "She's from the Whitman Creek Massacre." The doctor's expression sobered instantly. "The only survivor?" "Yes, sir," Sarah answered. "They killed my father first, then my mother and brother. I hid under her body." Dr. Harrison pulled a chair beside the bed, his movements deliberate, as if approaching a wounded animal. "You've endured something terrible, Miss Mitchell, something no child should ever experience." He hesitated before continuing. "How did you reach Riverstone?" "Eagle Feather brought me," Sarah repeated. "He said to tell you he sends a child who walked between worlds." The doctor and his wife exchanged a significant glance. "You know him?" Sarah asked, catching the unspoken communication. Dr. Harrison nodded slowly. "Eagle Feather and I have an understanding. He brings his people to me when army doctors won't treat them. I provide medicine for his village when I can." His gaze sharpened. "Did he tell you anything else?" Sarah considered the question. "He said you treat Indian and white the same, and that he would watch for 3 days to make sure I was safe." A faint smile touched the doctor's lips. "That sounds like him." He patted Sarah's hand. "Rest assured you are safe here. Once you've regained your strength, we'll need to notify the authorities about what happened, but that can wait." "What will happen to me?" Sarah asked, the question that had lurked beneath all others finally emerging. "Do you have family elsewhere?" Mrs. Harrison asked gently. "Anyone we could contact?" Sarah shook her head. "Just us. Just the ones who—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Then for now," Dr. Harrison said firmly, "you'll stay with us. We have plenty of room. and Emma has long wished for a young person to fuss over. His wife nodded agreement, though Sarah noticed hesitation in her eyes. Not reluctance, she realized, but fear. Fear for what bringing a massacre survivor into their home might mean in a territory balanced on the knife edge of conflict. "Rest now," Mrs. Harrison said, adjusting Sarah's blankets. "Tomorrow is soon enough for decisions." As they left the room, Sarah caught fragments of their whispered conversation in the hallway. Territorial authorities will want blame all Kiowa for the actions of renegades. Can't send her to an orphanage, Robert. Never suggested she's seen too much death already. Their voices faded as they moved further, and from her door, Sarah turned toward the window, watching clouds drift across an impossibly blue sky. The same sky that had witnessed her family's destruction now continued its eternal passage, indifferent to the rupture in her world. She clutched Eagle Feather's amulet, tracing its etched symbols with her fingertip. "I was chosen to live when death came close," she whispered, testing the words, searching for meaning in survival when everyone she loved had perished. Sleep claimed her eventually, but not before she had memorized every detail of the small room, the exit routes, the potential weapons, the shadows where one might hide if danger approached. Even in safety, her mind had recalibrated to the calculus of survival. The following days established a tentative routine. Sarah's physical wounds, minor cuts, bruises, and a sprained wrist suffered during her desperate hiding, healed rapidly under the Harrisons' care. The deeper injuries remained raw and untouchable, manifesting in nightmares that left her screaming into her pillow and a hypervigilance that transformed ordinary sounds into harbingers of attack. Emma Harrison proved a patient caretaker, neither pushing Sarah to speak of her ordeal nor pretending it hadn't occurred. She simply included the girl in daily tasks, preparing meals, tending the small garden behind their cabin, organizing the doctor's supplies. The quiet rhythm of domestic life provided structure when Sarah's internal landscape remained chaotic. Dr. Harrison, often occupied with patients, nonetheless made time each evening to sit with Sarah, sometimes reading aloud from his limited library, sometimes simply sharing companionable silence. He never questioned her about Eagle Feather again, though Sarah occasionally caught him studying the blue stone amulet she refused to remove. On her 5th day at Riverstone, official inquiries began. Sheriff James Wilson arrived from the territorial headquarters, accompanied by 2 soldiers from the nearby fort. They interviewed Sarah in the Harrisons' front room, Dr. Harrison insisting on remaining present throughout. "I understand how difficult this is," Sheriff Wilson said, his mustache twitching with discomfort at questioning a traumatized child. "But anything you can tell us about the attackers might help prevent future incidents." Sarah described what she had seen: the warriors' paint patterns, the distinctive headdress worn by their leader, the methodical nature of the attack. She omitted Eagle Feather's involvement in her rescue, saying only that she had hidden until the attackers left, then walked as far as she could before collapsing where the Harrisons found her. The lie sat uncomfortably, contradicting Eagle Feather's advice about truth as a shield. But Sarah had observed enough of the settlers' conversations to understand that admitting a Kiowa medicine man had saved her might endanger both Eagle Feather and herself in the current climate of suspicion. "Renegade Kiowa," one soldier muttered. To the other, "Same bunch that hit the Fletcher homestead last month, I'd wager." "Can you be certain they were Kiowa?" Dr. Harrison asked carefully. "Several tribes use similar paint patterns." The soldier gave Harrison a hard look. "Known for your sympathies, aren't you, Doctor? Even after all the settlers they've butchered." "I treat the wounded regardless of race," Harrison replied evenly, "and I've seen atrocities committed by both sides." Sheriff Wilson cleared his throat. "That's enough. The girl's been through enough without witnessing grown men bickering." He turned to Sarah. "You've been very brave, Miss Mitchell. We'll do everything possible to track down those responsible." After they departed, Sarah found Dr. Harrison staring pensively through the window. "I lied to them," she admitted quietly. "About how I got here." He nodded without turning. "I suspected as much. Your arrival timeline never quite made sense for someone traveling on foot." A pause. "May I ask why?" "They would have gone looking for him, for his people, and they're not the ones who attacked us." "No," Harrison agreed. "Eagle Feather's band has maintained peace, even when others haven't." He finally looked at her. "Your instincts were sound, Sarah. Sometimes protection requires discretion." That evening, as Sarah helped Emma prepare supper, a commotion erupted outside. Male voices raised in anger, the thud of footsteps on the trading post's packed dirt yard. Dr. Harrison went to investigate, returning moments later with a grave expression. "A hunting party brought in 3 bodies," he told his wife in low tones. "Settlers from east of here. Same attack pattern." Emma's hand flew to her throat. "Not another massacre?" "Just a small homestead this time. But it's stirred up the men. There's talk of forming a militia, hunting down every Kiowa encampment within 100 miles. "Including Eagle Feather's people?" Sarah asked, abandoning any pretense of not listening. Harrison sighed heavily. "Especially his. They're the closest known settlement." He knelt to her level. "Sarah, I think it's time I told you something about Eagle Feather. Something few white folks know." Sarah set down the plate she'd been drying, giving the doctor her full attention. 20 years ago, when this territory first opened to settlement, there was a young army doctor stationed at Fort Williams, the old fort, before they rebuilt further west. That doctor treated a Kiowa child for a snake bite, saving his leg when others would have amputated. Harrison's eyes took on a distant quality. That child's father was a respected warrior who later became a medicine man. "Eagle Feather," Sarah whispered. Harrison nodded. He never forgot that a white healer saved his son. When tensions rose between settlers and tribes, Eagle Feather advocated for peace, even when it cost him standing among his own people. He and that army doctor, who later became a civilian physician at a certain trading post, maintained a cautious alliance. "You," Sarah said, "you were that army doctor." "Yes. And now I fear that connection may not be enough to protect his people from retribution they don't deserve." He placed his hands on Sarah's shoulders. "Which is why I must ask you something difficult. Would you be willing to tell the true story of your rescue? To testify that Kiowa hands saved when others Kiowa killed?" Sarah felt the weight of the request. To speak publicly about those days would mean reliving every moment of horror, exposing her wounds to the scrutiny of strangers. Yet remaining silent might condemn innocent people to suffering. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she admitted. "Strength comes in many forms," Emma said, joining them. "Sometimes it's in survival itself. Sometimes in the words that follow." Sarah touched Eagle Feather's amulet. "He said I was chosen to live when death came close. Maybe this is why." "Sleep on it," Harrison advised. "Such decisions shouldn't be rushed." That night, Sarah dreamed not of the massacre, but of her mother sitting beside her bed in Pine Creek Settlement, brushing Sarah's hair as she had done each evening. "Remember what matters," Dream Rebecca said, her voice exactly as Sarah remembered. "Not how life ends, but how it continues." Sarah woke with tears on her cheeks, but clarity in her mind. At breakfast, she told the Harrisons her decision. "I'll speak. I'll tell them about Eagle Feather." Dr. Harrison arranged a gathering at the trading post's main building that afternoon. Sheriff Wilson returned, accompanied by the post's manager, several prominent traders, and the militiamen who had been most vocal about retaliation. Sarah stood before them, a small figure in a borrowed dress, her hair neatly braided by Emma's. Careful hands, the blue amulet visible at her throat. "My name is Sarah Mitchell," she began, her voice steadier than she had expected. "1 week ago, I watched my family die when our wagon train was attacked in Whispering Valley." The room fell silent as she recounted the ambush, her desperate hiding place beneath her mother's body, the terrifying night spent among the dead. Men shifted uncomfortably as she described the raiders' appearance in detail, specifics that marked them as a particular band known for rejecting peace treaties. "When I thought I would die from hunger or cold or wolves," she continued, "another group of Kiowa came. Their leader was a medicine man named Eagle Feather." Murmurs rippled through the assembled men. Sheriff Wilson leaned forward intently. "He found me when I was playing dead. He could have killed me. Instead, he brought me here to Dr. Harrison because he knew I would be safe." Sarah's gaze swept the room. "Eagle Feather told me those who attack my family don't speak for all his people, just as the settlers who cheat and harm Indians don't speak for all white people." "Convenient tale," one militiaman scoffed. "A Kiowa saves one white girl, while his brothers slaughter dozens?" "It's true," Sarah insisted. "He watched this trading post for 3 days to make sure I was well treated. He gave me this." She held up the amulet. "For protection against dark spirits." Sheriff Wilson studied her thoughtfully. "You're saying these were different bands? Different Kiowa entirely?" "Yes, sir. Eagle Feather's people follow what he calls the peace path. The raiders were led by someone with a headdress of hawk feathers and red paint across his eyes. Eagle Feather called them those who turned from the old ways." A trader near the back suddenly stepped forward. "Broken Lance's bunch. They've rejected the reservation system entirely. Been raiding across 3 territories." Dr. Harrison addressed the room. "Gentlemen, what this young lady has provided is valuable intelligence. She's distinguished between hostile forces and peaceful settlements. Attacking Eagle Feather's people would not only punish the innocent, but eliminate one of the few moderating influences among the Kiowa bands." The discussion that followed was heated, with opinions divided between those demanding immediate action against any native encampment and those advocating for targeted pursuit of the actual perpetrators. Sarah remained standing throughout, her presence a silent reminder of what indiscriminate violence had already cost. Finally, Sheriff Wilson raised his hands for silence. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm sending riders to Fort Williams with Miss Mitchell's description of the raiders. The army can dispatch scouts to track Broken Lance's band specifically." He turned to the militia organizers. "Meanwhile, you men stand down. No unauthorized expeditions against peaceful settlements. Anyone disobeying faces charges of inciting unrest in a federal territory." The meeting dissolved into smaller discussions, with Sarah finding herself the recipient of awkward pats on the shoulder and murmured acknowledgments of her courage. As the trading post emptied, Sheriff Wilson approached her privately. "That took real grit, Miss Mitchell," he said quietly. "Not many grown men would have done the same." "Will it help?" Sarah asked. "Will they leave Eagle Feather's people alone?" Wilson sighed. "I can't promise what every hothead with a rifle might do. But you've given us reason to focus our efforts where they belong." He hesitated. "There's something else we need to discuss. Your future arrangements." Sarah glanced toward the Harrisons, who stood nearby in conversation with the post manager. "There's an orphanage in the territorial capital," Wilson continued. "Clean place, proper schooling. Or we could arrange transportation east if you have distant relations willing to take you in." "She'll be staying with us," Emma Harrison interjected, having approached without Sarah noticing. "We've already discussed it." Wilson raised his eyebrows. "That's mighty generous, Mrs. Harrison, but there are proper channels. My wife and I've submitted formal guardianship papers," Dr. Harrison added, joining them. "Unless there are objections on official grounds." The sheriff seemed surprised, but not displeased. "None from me. I'll see the paperwork reaches the right desk." He tipped his hat to Sarah. "Seems you've landed on your feet, Miss Mitchell, despite everything." Later that evening, when the trading post had settled into night routines, Sarah sat on the Harrisons' porch steps, watching stars emerge. Emma brought her a shawl against the cooling air. "You don't have to take me in," Sarah said, as the woman settled beside her. "I know it complicates things for you and the doctor." "Life is always complicated," Emma replied. "That's no reason to avoid doing what's right." She smoothed her skirts absently. "Robert and I had a daughter once. Fever took her when she was 7. That was before we came west." Sarah absorbed this revelation. "I'm not her," she said carefully. "I can't replace her." "No," Emma agreed, "just as we can't replace your parents. But perhaps we can be something to each other all the same." A comfortable silence fell between them. In the distance, beyond, the stockade fence, beyond the cluster of buildings that comprised Riverstone Trading Post, Sarah thought she glimpsed movement along the tree line. Perhaps a deer, perhaps something else entirely. She touched the blue stone amulet and whispered words too soft for Emma to hear. "I see you watching, Eagle Feather. I'm safe. Your truth was my shield." Whether the distant figure nodded in response, or whether it was merely the wind stirring branches, Sarah couldn't be certain. But as she rose to follow Emma inside, she felt the first fragile stirring of something she had thought lost forever in Whispering Valley. The possibility of a future extending beyond mere survival. That night, for the first time since the massacre, Sarah slept without nightmares, dreaming instead of wide prairies where two paths ran parallel beneath an endless sky. Autumn transformed the landscape around Riverstone Trading Post, painting cottonwood groves with gold and amber hues, while morning frost etched delicate patterns across the window panes of the Harrison cabin. 4 months had passed since Sarah Mitchell's arrival, each day adding another stitch to the fragile tapestry of her new life. The physical evidence of her ordeal had faded, scrapes healed, bruises disappeared, her thin frame filling out under Emma Harrison's determined feeding. The internal wounds remained, covered but not closed, like poorly set fractures that ached when storms approached. Sarah had settled into a routine that provided structure if not complete comfort. Mornings were spent assisting Emma with household tasks or helping Dr. Harrison organize his medical supplies. Afternoons often found her at the small table in the corner of the doctor's examination room, working through arithmetic problems or practicing penmanship on slate tablets. The Harrisons insisted education continue despite their remote location. "Knowledge is portable," Dr. Harrison would say. "Unlike land or livestock, it can't be taken from you." The trading post had no formal school, but Emma had taught children before her marriage and maintained a small collection of educational texts. 3 other children from families stationed permanently at Riverstone joined these impromptu lessons. The post manager's son and daughter, ages 10 and 8, and the 13-year-old daughter of the blacksmith. Sarah, accustomed to solitude, since the massacre, approached these social interactions cautiously, like a wild creature uncertain whether offered food concealed a trap. "Give her time," Emma told her husband, when he expressed concern about Sarah's continued reticence. "Some wounds heal from the inside out." Sarah overheard this exchange from the hallway, adding it to her growing catalogue of observations about these people who had claimed guardianship of her. The Harrisons spoke to each other with a gentle directness that reminded her of her parents' relationship. Disagreements aired openly but respectfully, affection expressed through small gestures rather than grand pronouncements. They maintained clear routines, yet adapted quickly to emergencies, a necessity in frontier medicine where patients arrived at all hours with conditions ranging from childbirth to gunshot wounds. Most revealing were their interactions with the diverse population that frequented Riverstone. Dr. Harrison treated everyone with the same professional competence. White settlers, Native Americans from peaceful bands, Mexican traders, and the occasional buffalo soldier from the fort. Emma similarly welcomed all comers, serving coffee to waiting families regardless of appearance or background. This practiced neutrality had initially struck Sarah as calculated, perhaps even false. Over time, she recognized it as a deliberate philosophy, one that had made Riverstone Trading Post an unusual oasis of relative peace in contested territory. On a particularly crisp October morning, Sarah was sweeping the front porch when she noticed riders approaching. 5 men in military uniforms escorting a wagon. Something about their purposeful advance triggered a visceral response. Her body, tensing before her mind, had fully processed the potential threat. The broom clattered to the porch as she backed toward the door. "Dr. Harrison!" she called, her voice controlled despite the sudden acceleration of her heartbeat. "Soldiers coming." The doctor emerged from his office, wiping his hands on a cloth. He squinted at the approaching party, then gently placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "It's all right," he said. "That's Captain Miller. I recognize his posture, probably bringing someone who needs treatment." He studied her face. "Would you prefer to help Emma in the kitchen until they've gone?" Sarah appreciated the offer, but shook her head. 4 months of relative safety had not eliminated her instinctive fear reaction to unexpected arrivals, but she had developed strategies for managing it. "I'll be fine, just startled me." The wagon halted before their cabin. Captain Miller, a square-jawed man with a mustache trimmed to military precision, dismounted and approached. "Harrison," he called, foregoing pleasantries. "Got a situation needs your attention." Dr. Harrison descended the steps. "Medical situation, I presume?" "Of sorts." Miller gestured toward the wagon. "Found him about 15 miles southwest of here. Alone, no horse. Pretty badly cut up. Thought about taking him to the fort, but he's delirious. Keep saying your name." Sarah remained on the porch as the doctor approached the wagon. 2 soldiers pulled back the canvas covering, revealing a man lying motionless on a makeshift pallet. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the dark stains of blood on the blankets wrapped around him. Harrison leaned into the wagon, examining the patient briefly. "Bring him inside," he instructed, "straight to the surgery." As the soldiers lifted the injured man, his head lolled to one side, revealing copper-hued skin and long black hair streaked with gray. Sarah froze, recognition flooding through her. Despite the pallor of illness and the grime of days spent exposed to the elements, she knew that face. "Eagle feather," she whispered. The medicine man's eyes fluttered open at that moment, unfocused and glazed with fever. His cracked lips moved, forming words too soft to hear from where she stood. One of the soldiers carrying him glanced down, with undisguised contempt. "Been babbling nonsense for hours. Something about spirits and a child." Sarah followed as they carried Eagle Feather into Dr. Harrison's examination room. The doctor was already rolling up his sleeves, directing the placement of the patient on his operating table. "Sarah," he said, without looking up, "fetch my surgical kit from the cabinet and ask Emma to bring hot water and clean linens." She moved automatically to comply, returning moments later with the leather case containing Harrison's instruments. The soldiers had departed, leaving only Captain Miller observing from near the doorway. "You know him?" Miller asked Harrison, as the doctor cut away blood-soaked fabric to reveal multiple deep lacerations across Eagle Feather's torso and left thigh. "Yes," Harrison answered simply, focused on his examination. "He's saved more settler lives than you might imagine, Captain, including Sarah's." Miller's gaze shifted to Sarah, recognition dawning. "The massacre survivor. This is the Kiowa who found you?" Sarah nodded, clutching fresh linens Emma had handed her. "He brought me here when everyone else was dead." The captain's expression remained neutral, but something in his posture softened slightly. What happened to him? Multiple knife wounds, Harrison reported, cleaning one particularly deep gash that ran from Eagle Feather's shoulder to mid-chest. Defensive cuts on his hands. He fought someone, and recently these aren't more than 2 days old. Broken. Lance, the medicine man whispered suddenly, his eyes opening to fix on Harrison with startling clarity. Comes for the girl, Spirit Walker. Sarah stepped closer. Eagle Feather, it's Sarah, I'm here. The medicine man's gaze shifted to her, recognition struggling through the haze of fever. Child spirit, he murmured. You live still. Good. His hand reached weakly toward her, fingers brushing the blue amulet she still wore. Protected. What's he talking about? Miller asked. Who's broken Lance? The war chief who led the massacre, Sarah answered, recalling the descriptions she'd provided months earlier. The one with the hawk feather headdress. Harrison continued working as they spoke, cleaning wounds with carbolic, solution and assessing which would require stitching. Eagle Feather, can you tell us what happened? Who did this to you? The medicine man's eyes had drifted closed again, but he responded in fragmented sentences. Village attacked, 3 days passed. Broken Lance's warriors said we harbor white. Sympathies. A grimace of pain crossed his features as Harrison probed a particularly deep wound. Killed many, took others. I escaped. To warn. Warn who? Miller pressed. The girl, the doctor, all at Riverstone Place. Eagle Feather's breathing became more labored. Broken Lance knows she lives, comes to finish. A cold weight settled in Sarah's stomach. Captain Miller straightened, instantly alert. How many warriors? When will they attack? Eagle Feather's eyes fluttered. Many, 20, maybe more. 2 days behind me, no more. Miller turned abruptly. I need to get back to the fort, organize a defensive unit. He paused. At the doorway, Harrison, this trading post isn't secure enough. Too many entry points, not enough men. If a war party that size is coming, you should evacuate to the fort. How many troops can you spare immediately? Harrison asked, continuing his methodical treatment of Eagle Feather's wounds. 6, maybe 8, until reinforcements arrive. Not enough to move wounded safely. And I have 3 bedridden patients besides Eagle Feather. We'll have to fortify here. Miller looked displeased but nodded curtly. I'll send what men I can spare with supplies. Meantime, gather everyone. Into the main trading house, thick walls, fewer windows. He glanced at Sarah. Get word to all families. Women and children in the center rooms, men on perimeter defense. After the captain departed, a heavy silence filled the surgery. Emma, who had been quietly assisting her husband, placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. Go to your room and unpack a small bag, she instructed softly. Only essentials. Sarah stood rooted, watching Harrison stitch Eagle Feather's largest wound with practiced efficiency. He came to warn us. Because of me. Because he's a man of honor, Harrison corrected, without looking up. This isn't your fault, Sarah. But if I had died there, then a massacre would still have occurred, and these tensions would still exist, Harrison interrupted firmly. The conflicts between settlers and tribes began long before you were born, and will likely continue long after we're gone. All we can control is our own actions in this moment. Emma guided Sarah from the room. Help me gather supplies while the doctor works. Keeping busy helps when fears crowd in. The next hours passed in controlled chaos as Riverstone Trading Post transformed from commercial outpost to makeshift fortress. Families consolidated into the trading house's central rooms. Men reinforced windows with whatever materials could be found. By nightfall, 8 soldiers from the fort had arrived with additional ammunition and supplies, establishing defensive positions around the compound. Sarah moved through these preparations as if in a dream, following instructions mechanically while her mind circled the same terrifying thought. Broken Lance was coming specifically for her. Her survival had somehow transformed from miracle to liability, endangering everyone at Riverstone. As darkness fell, she found herself beside Eagle Feather's sickbed, now established in a small back room of the trading house. Dr. Harrison had completed treatment, stitching the worst wounds and wrapping the medicine man's torso in clean bandages. Fever still claimed him, but his breathing had steadied. "Will he live?" Sarah asked as Harrison checked the bandages. "If infection doesn't set in, yes. He's strong, and he found help in time." The doctor straightened, studying her expression. "You should be resting. Tomorrow may be difficult." "I can't sleep." Sarah's fingers worried the blue stone amulet. "He said I was a spirit walker. What does that mean?" Harrison sighed, seating himself on the room's only chair. "In Kiowa belief, someone who has been near death but returned carries special medicine, a connection to the spirit world. When Eagle Feather found you alive among the dead, he believed you had walked between worlds. And that's why Broken Lance wants me dead? Because of a belief? Partly that. Partly because you can identify him and his warriors." Harrison rubbed, his tired eyes beneath his spectacles. "And partly, I suspect, because your testimony prevented the retaliatory attacks his actions were likely designed to provoke. You're living proof that not all Kiowa are enemies, which undermines his effort to force a final conflict between his people and settlers." Sarah absorbed this with the directness that characterized her approach to difficult truths. "So everyone here is in danger because I spoke up. Everyone here is in danger because a violent man seeks to further his agenda through more violence," Harrison corrected. "Your truth-telling may have been the immediate catalyst, but never mistake it as the cause." He stood, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder. "Try to rest. Emma has prepared pallets for us near the main room." Left alone with the unconscious medicine man, Sarah studied his weathered face. In sleep, the deep lines around his eyes and mouth softened, revealing glimpses of the younger warrior he had once been. She thought of him searching for her among the dead at Whispering Valley, carrying her away from destruction, watching over the trading post to ensure her safety. "I'm sorry," she whispered, uncertain whether he could hear. "I didn't understand what it would cost when I told them about you." "Cost always comes," Eagle Feather responded unexpectedly, his eyes still closed. "Truth has price. Silence, too, has a price. Better to pay for truth." Sarah started, then leaned closer. "You're awake." "Spirit walks close to mine," he murmured. "Death circles us both, yet chooses neither." His eyes opened, surprisingly clear despite his weakened state. "You wear the stone still." Sarah touched the amulet. "Always. It reminds me that I was chosen to live." The faintest smile touched his lips. "Good medicine." He studied her face. "You have changed, growing stronger." "Not strong enough," Sarah confessed. "I'm afraid. For everyone here because of me." Eagle Feather's hand moved slowly to grasp hers. His palm felt fevered, but his grip remained firm. "Fear walks with courage, always. Cannot have one without other." His voice strengthened slightly. "Listen now. If Broken Lance comes, he will seek you first. His medicine weakens if Spirit Walker lives. What should I do? When fighting starts, many warriors will enter this place. They will search for yellow-haired girl." His eyes held hers intently. "But they cannot find what is not seen." Sarah frowned, puzzled. "I don't understand." With visible effort, Eagle Feather reached beneath the bandages covering his chest, withdrawing a small leather pouch similar to the one he wore around his neck. "Medicine bundle," he explained. "Inside, sacred things. Earth from birth ground. Bone from spirit animal. Herbs that open sight beyond seeing." He pressed it into her hand. "When time comes, make yourself unseen." Sarah accepted the pouch, uncertain of its significance, but recognizing the importance Eagle Feather placed upon it. "Thank you." The medicine man's eyes drifted closed again, energy depleted by the exchange. "Now go, prepare your heart. Tomorrow spirits will dance." Sarah returned to the main room of the trading house where families huddled in tense groups, speaking in hushed tones or making final preparations. Emma intercepted her, guiding her toward a corner where blankets had been arranged. "You should sleep while you can," Emma said, her own exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. "Robert says we may have one more day before they arrive, but preparations continue through the night." Sarah obediently lay down, though she doubted sleep would come. "Emma," she said as the woman turned to leave, "what will happen if the soldiers can't stop them?" Emma Harrison hesitated, torn between comforting platitudes and honest assessment. "Then we do what settlers have always done. Stand together and fight with everything we have." Later, in the deepest part of night, when even whispered conversations had fallen silent, Sarah crept back to Eagle Feather's room, carrying a small bundle. The medicine man slept fitfully, occasionally murmuring words in his native tongue. Sarah settled on the floor beside his cot, removing items from her bundle. A small knife she had acquired from the trading post supplies, a mirror from Emma's, sewing kit, and a jar of dark walnut stain used for treating leather. Working by moonlight filtering through the room's single high window, Sarah studied her reflection. Pale skin, blonde hair, features that marked her as unmistakably different from Eagle Feather's people, features that would make her instantly identifiable to warriors seeking a yellow-haired girl. Her fingers traced the contours of her face, considering possibilities that had formed in her mind since the medicine man's cryptic advice. "They cannot find what is not seen." With deliberate movements, Sarah opened Eagle Feather's medicine bundle, examining its contents. Small pouches of herbs, objects whose purpose she couldn't determine, and soft earth wrapped in thin hide. She set these aside carefully, then uncapped the walnut stain. Its pungent odor filled the small room as she dipped her fingers into the dark liquid. The first touch against her skin felt cool, foreign. She worked methodically, covering her face, neck, and hands with the deep brown stain. When the jar was empty, she used the knife to cut her hair to chin length, letting blonde strands fall to the floor. Finally, she removed her dress, replacing it with clothing she had taken from the trading post's stores. Boys' trousers, a loose shirt, and a leather vest. In the mirror's reflection, a different person stared back. Not Sarah Mitchell, survivor of Whispering Valley, but someone unrecognizable, indeterminate. Not quite Native American in appearance, but no longer obviously white either. The transformation wasn't perfect. It wouldn't withstand close inspection, but in the chaos of an attack, in moments of confusion and searching, it might be enough. She repacked Eagle Feather's sacred items into their pouch and tucked it into the vest pocket, directly over her heart. The blue stone amulet remained around her neck, now hidden beneath the shirt collar. As dawn approached, Sarah curled on the floor beside Eagle Feather's cot, not sleeping but waiting, counting heartbeats as she had beneath her mother's body months earlier. The attack began not with the wartime shouts she expected, but with eerie silence. Midway through the following afternoon, the trading post's watchman noticed the absence of usual wildlife sounds. No birds calling, no ground squirrels darting between buildings. An unnatural stillness descended, raising the hairs on everyone's necks before the first arrow sailed over the stockade fence. "They're here!" The cry rang out, followed by the immediate response of soldiers and armed settlers moving to defensive positions. Dr. Harrison burst into Eagle Feather's room, stopping short at the sight of the transformed child sitting calmly beside the medicine man's cot. "Sarah, what have you done?" "Made myself unseen," she answered simply. Understanding crossed his features, followed quickly by concern. "Clever but dangerous. If they think you're one of them, they won't look closely," she countered. I'll Stay with Eagle Feather. He needs protection too. Harrison appeared torn between admiration for her ingenuity and fear for her safety. Outside, the first gunshots punctuated their conversation. No time to argue, he decided. Stay low, stay hidden. If they breach the building, use the crawl space Emma showed you yesterday. He pressed a small derringer into her hand. Last resort. Only Sarah nodded, accepting the weapon with steady hands. As Harrison turned to leave, she called after him, "Be careful." A sad smile touched his lips. "Always am. Too stubborn to die easily." Then he was gone, rushing to assist with the wounded, who would inevitably need his care. Through the room's small window, Sarah watched shadows moving among the outbuildings, darting figures working their way closer to the trading house. Gunfire erupted sporadically as defenders spotted targets. A warrior fell in the open space between buildings. Then another, but there were many, just as Eagle Feather had warned, and they advanced with tactical precision that belied the savage descriptor settlers often applied. "They come through back way," Eagle Feather murmured from his cot. "Old tunnel from storage. Cellar, built when trading post first made, for escaping if attacked." Sarah turned sharply. "How do you know that?" "Watched this place many seasons, know its secrets." His eyes remained closed, but his breathing had quickened. "Listen. Below. Us." Sarah pressed her ear to the floorboards. At first, she heard nothing beyond the continuing gunfire outside. Then, a faint scraping sound, rhythmic and deliberate. Someone was indeed moving beneath the trading house. "We need to warn the others," she whispered. "Too late," Eagle Feather replied. "Already inside, coming up." Sarah's mind raced. The derringer contained only 2 bullets, practically useless against multiple warriors. The window was too small for escape. The door opened onto a hallway likely to become a battlefield within minutes. She glanced around desperately, seeking options. "Under," Eagle Feather instructed weakly. "Hide under sleeping place." The space beneath his cot was narrow, but might conceal her if no one looked closely. Sarah hesitated. "What about you?" "Cannot move. We'll face what comes." His eyes opened, meeting hers with surprising clarity. "Remember teaching. Spirit walks between worlds. Now time to walk between seen and unseen." Sarah didn't fully understand, but survival instinct propelled her beneath the cot, just as splintering wood sounded from somewhere nearby. Voices in the Kiowa language, hushed but urgent, moved closer. She clutched the derringer, controlling her breathing as her father had taught her when they hunted together in winters past. The door crashed open. Through the small gap between floor and cot edge, Sarah observed 3 pairs of moccasined feet enter the room. Worn leather decorated with beadwork patterns distinct from Eagle Feather's simpler style. One warrior spoke sharply, receiving a calm reply from Eagle Feather. The exchange continued, voices rising. Though Sarah couldn't understand the words, the tension was unmistakable. One warrior moved closer to the cot, standing directly beside where she hid. Through the gap, she could see a knife sheath attached to his legging, the bone handle of the blade within easy reach. Eagle Feather's voice took on a chanting quality, the cadence similar to what Sarah had heard when he found her in Whispering Valley. The warrior nearest her shifted uncomfortably, taking a half step back. Another barked what sounded like a question, receiving only continued chanting in response. Suddenly, a new voice entered the room. Deeper, authoritative, speaking words that silenced all others. Heavy footsteps approached the cot, stopping beside it. From her hiding place, Sarah could see elaborately beaded leggings and a knife with a distinctive red-wrapped handle thrust through a belt. Broken lance. It could be no other. The war chief spoke to Eagle Feather, his tone conversational despite the circumstances. Eagle Feather responded evenly, his chanting ceased. Though Sarah couldn't see their faces, she imagined the two men regarding each other with the complex recognition of adversaries with shared history. Broken Lance asked something that included what sounded like a question. Eagle Feather's answer was brief. A moment of silence followed, broken by a sharp laugh from the war chief. He issued what was clearly an order, and one warrior moved to the window while another began searching the room, opening a small cabinet, looking behind a screen. They were searching for her. Sarah tightened her grip on the derringer, knowing discovery was inevitable. If she fired at Broken Lance, she might not survive, but perhaps his death would disrupt the attack enough for others to escape. Her finger tensed on the trigger. Above her, Eagle Feather began chanting again, louder now, with a rhythmic slapping sound accompanying the words. Broken Lance shouted something, a command to stop, but the medicine man continued unabated. The warriors, searching the room, hesitated, clearly unsettled by whatever was transpiring. Sarah felt a strange sensation spreading through her limbs, a tingling warmth that started at her center and extended outward. The medicine bundle in her vest pocket seemed to grow hot against her chest. Eagle Feather's voice rose further, no longer chanting, but calling out single words with increasing urgency. Broken Lance stepped back from the cot, saying something to his warriors. They responded with evident confusion. The war chief's voice hardened, issuing another command. One warrior reluctantly approached the cot again, bending down. Sarah found herself looking directly into dark eyes, not 3 feet from her own. The warrior stared at the space where she lay hidden, his gaze moving across her position. Yet his expression remained searching, puzzled, as if seeing through rather than at her. He straightened, speaking words that sounded like a negative. Broken Lance approached, crouching to look under the cot himself. Sarah held her breath as the war chief's face came into view. Middle-aged but strong, with a dramatic scar running from temple to jaw on one side and hawk feathers tied into his braided hair. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept the space. Where she lay and saw nothing, confusion crossed his features. He reached into the space, his hand passing inches from Sarah's face, groping blindly. She remained perfectly still, confusion mixing with her fear. How could he not see her? Eagle Feather's chanting reached a crescendo. Broken Lance withdrew his hand, rising quickly and backing away from the cot. He snapped orders to his warriors, who seemed equally eager to depart. Within moments, they had left the room, footsteps retreating down the hallway. Sarah remained motionless, uncertain whether the danger had truly passed or if this was some trick to draw her out. Above her, Eagle Feather's chanting subsided into labored breathing. "Come," he whispered, "while medicine holds." She crawled from beneath the cot, staring at the medicine man in bewilderment. "They looked right at me. How did they not see me?" Eagle Feather's face was drawn with exhaustion, the effort of whatever he had done clearly depleting his already limited strength. Old medicine, strong medicine, makes eyes see what mind expects. His hand reached weakly for hers. Spirit Walker, walked between seen and unseen. Sarah shook her head, struggling to comprehend. "You made me invisible?" "Not invisible, unseeable." He closed his eyes. "Medicine fades soon. Must hide properly now. They will return." Outside, gunfire continued. Through the window, Sarah could see several buildings had been set ablaze, smoke rising in thick columns. The immediate danger might have passed, but the battle for Riverstone Trading Post was far from over. Eagle Feather's breathing had grown more labored. Sarah checked his bandages, finding fresh blood seeping through. "You've torn your stitches," she said. "The chanting, whatever you did, it's weakened you." He didn't respond, consciousness slipping away as the last of his strength ebbed. Sarah realized with sudden clarity that the medicine man had sacrificed his chance at recovery to protect her once again. Tears welled in her eyes as she adjusted his blankets, torn between staying at his side and seeking safer shelter as he had instructed. From beyond the door came sounds of fighting moving closer, shouted commands in English, responding cries in Kiowa. The hallway would soon become a battleground. Decision made, Sarah gathered Eagle Feather's medicine bundle and the derringer, preparing to find the crawl space Emma had shown her. As she turned to leave, the medicine man's eyes opened one final time. "Remember," he whispered. "Death did. Not choose you, life did." Sarah carried those words with her as she slipped from the room, navigating the chaotic trading house in search of temporary safety, the blue stone amulet bouncing against her chest with each step. Behind her, Eagle Feather closed his eyes, a faint smile touching his lips as he surrendered to the darkness claiming him. The battle for Riverstone Trading Post lasted through the night and into the following day. Sarah remained hidden in the crawl space beneath the trading house floor, listening to the chaos above, gunfire, shouts of pain and triumph, the crackle of flames consuming outbuildings. Occasionally, moccasined feet would pass directly overhead, mere inches from where she lay pressed against the cool earth. In those moments, she clutched Eagle Feather's medicine bundle and remained perfectly still, counting heartbeats as she had learned to do in Whispering Valley. By dawn, the attacking force had retreated, but at devastating cost to Riverstone. 3 defenders lay dead, a soldier, the blacksmith, and the post manager's teenage son. Many more nursed wounds ranging from minor to life-threatening. Dr. Harrison worked without rest, moving from patient to patient while Emma assisted, her apron stained with blood, not her own. The trading house itself had survived, though its eastern wall was scorched from attempted arson. The livery stable and 2 storage buildings had burned completely. Most of the livestock had either been killed or scattered during the fighting. When Sarah finally emerged from hiding, the walnut stain still darkening her skin and her boy's clothing smudged with dirt, few recognized her immediately. Dr. Harrison, binding a shoulder wound on a soldier, paused mid-motion when she approached. "Thank God," he murmured, resuming his work with renewed focus. "Emma's been beside herself. Check the back room. She's tending patients there." Sarah found Emma Harrison changing bandages on a settler woman's burned arm. The older woman's composure, maintained throughout the crisis, momentarily crumbled at the sight of the disguised girl. "Sarah," she breathed, abandoning her task to embrace the child tightly. "We feared when they found Eagle Feather alone." "Is he alive?" Sarah asked, her voice muffled against Emma's shoulder. Emma drew back, honest even in moments when comfort might be kinder. "Barely. He's lost so much blood, and the fever's worse." She studied Sarah's transformed appearance more carefully. "Your disguise, it worked?" "They looked right at me and didn't see me," Sarah explained, still bewildered by the experience. "Eagle Feather did something, a chant, a ceremony. He called it old medicine." Emma's expression reflected polite skepticism, but she didn't contradict the girl's account. "Whatever happened, I'm grateful you're safe, but Broken Lance and his warriors may return. Captain Miller is arranging escort to the fort for all civilians as soon as transport can be organized." "What about Eagle Feather and the other wounded?" "Those who can be moved will go. Those who can't." Emma's voice trailed off, the implications clear. Sarah made her way to Eagle Feather's room, finding it unchanged except for fresh bandages on the medicine man's wounds. His breathing came, shallow and rapid, his skin burning with fever despite the cool cloths laid across his forehead. Sarah sat beside him, removing the medicine bundle from her pocket. "I kept it safe," she told his unconscious form. "Your medicine protected me just as you said it would." No response came, not even a flicker of awareness. Sarah placed the bundle beside his hand and settled into watchful silence, remembering her mother's similar vigils beside sick beds in Pine Creek Settlement. Rebecca Mitchell had possessed no formal medical training, but had known which herbs reduced fever, which poultices drew infection from wounds. Sarah wished desperately for that knowledge now, for any means to repay the debt. She owed this man. Dr. Harrison found her there an hour later, her hand resting lightly on Eagle Feather's arm. "Captain Miller's secured wagons," he informed her. "They're loading civilians now. Emma's packed our essential supplies." Sarah didn't move. "I'm staying with him." Harrison sighed heavily, removing his spectacles to rub eyes reddened from exhaustion. "Sarah, I understand your attachment to Eagle Feather, but his chances are—" He hesitated, softening the prognosis. "Even with proper care at the fort, recovery would be unlikely." "Then there's no reason to move him," she reasoned, with the direct logic that often disconcerted adults. "It would only cause more pain. And if Broken Lance returns while we're gone, the fort can spare only a small detachment to guard Riverstone until reinforcements arrive." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "He saved my life twice. I won't abandon him." For a moment, Harrison seemed prepared to assert guardian authority, to insist on her compliance for her own safety. Then his expression shifted, recognition replacing resistance. "You've made your choice," he said quietly, "just as Eagle Feather made his when he brought you to us." He pulled a chair beside her. "Then I suppose we're all staying." "What? No, you and Emma should—" "We're your guardians, Sarah, legal and moral. Where you remain, we remain." His tone brooked no argument, though his smile softened the declaration. "Besides, my patients need me. A doctor doesn't abandon the wounded, even when the situation seems hopeless." Emma entered as they were speaking, her expression suggesting she'd anticipated this outcome. "I've told Captain Miller we're staying. He's leaving 4 soldiers under Sergeant Davis's command." She set a basket on the small table. Fresh bandages, carbolic solution, and willow bark tea for the fever. "I've instructed Mrs. Taylor on caring for the other wounded at the fort." Sarah looked between these two people who had claimed responsibility for her welfare, recognizing the significance of their decision. "Thank you," she said simply. "Don't thank us yet," Harrison cautioned, rising to check Eagle Feather's condition. "The next few days will test us all." Those days stretched into a week, then 2. Eagle Feather's fever raged, occasionally breaking only to return with renewed intensity. His wounds, though properly cleaned and stitched, showed troubling signs of infection, despite Dr. Harrison's best efforts. The medicine man drifted between unconsciousness and delirium, sometimes speaking in his native tongue, sometimes in broken English peppered with references to spirits and old ways. During one rare period of lucidity, he focused on Sarah with a sudden clarity. "You stayed," he observed, his voice barely audible. "Of course," she replied, helping him sip water from a metal cup. "You would have done the same." A ghost of a smile touched his cracked lips. "Perhaps, or perhaps wisdom would have sent me running." "Then wisdom isn't always right," Sarah countered. Eagle Feather studied her face, still bearing traces of the walnut stain that had disguised her features. "You are changed," he stated, "not just skin, inside." Sarah considered this assessment. The past months had indeed transformed her, from the terrified child hiding beneath her mother's body to someone capable of deliberate choices even amid danger. "I had to change," she answered finally, "to survive." "Yes, survival first, then more." His gaze drifted toward the window, where late autumn sunlight spilled across the trading post's recovering grounds. "Tell me of the battle, after Medicine Song." Sarah described what she had witnessed and what she later learned. The coordinated attack, the defenders' resistance, Broken Lance's eventual retreat with his remaining warriors. "Captain Miller believes they'll regroup with other renegade bands before attempting another raid," she concluded. "He's requested additional troops, And from Fort Williams, Eagle Feather nodded weakly. Broken Lance loses power now. Failed to eliminate Spirit Walker. Failed to provoke great war between peoples. His expression grew distant. Among Kiowa, failure carries heavy weight. Others will question his medicine. Will he try again? To find me? Perhaps. But path grows harder each day. His eyes return to her face. You must prepare still, learn, strengthen. Learn what? Ways of protection, ways of seeing. His hand moved feebly toward his medicine bundle, still placed beside him. Some gifts come unbidden, must learn to carry them. Before Sarah could question further, exhaustion reclaimed the medicine man. His eyes closed as he drifted back into uneasy sleep. Dr. Harrison, entering to check his patient, noted the exchange. He's more coherent, Sarah reported. Talked about Broken Lance losing power. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. In tribal politics, military failure often undermines leadership. If Broken Lance's warriors start questioning his decisions, his influence may wane. He examined Eagle Feather's wounds with gentle efficiency. Still, we shouldn't underestimate a desperate man's capacity for destruction. He talked about me needing to learn something, about gifts and protection. The doctor's hands paused briefly in their work. Eagle Feather believes you possess special abilities, Sarah. That your survival at Whispering Valley marked you in some spiritual way. His tone remained neutral, neither endorsing nor dismissing the concept. Many cultures have traditions about those who walk close to death, gaining insights or powers. Do you believe that? Sarah asked bluntly. Harrison considered the question. With characteristic thoughtfulness, I believe human experience encompasses more than science currently explains. Whether we attribute that to spiritual forces or natural phenomena beyond our understanding matters less than recognizing its reality. He smiled slightly. Which is a very long way of saying, I keep an open mind. But you don't think I'm actually different because I survived. I think survival itself changes people, he answered carefully. Whether through divine intervention, mystical transformation, or simply the psychological impact of extreme experience depends on one's framework. For understanding the world, he rewrapped a bandage across Eagle Feather's chest. What matters most is what meaning you make of your experiences, not which explanation others might impose. Later that evening, Sarah found Emma sorting supplies in the small kitchen area that had been established in the partially restored trading house. The settlement was slowly recovering, temporary structures replacing burned buildings, scattered livestock recovered from surrounding countryside, routine gradually emerging from chaos. The 4 soldiers left to guard Riverstone had integrated into daily operations, dividing their time between defensive patrols and reconstruction efforts. May I ask you something? Sarah inquired, seating herself on a wooden stool. Emma glanced up from her inventory list. Of course. Do you think people can be marked by events, changed in ways beyond just memories? Emma's hands stilled. This is about what Eagle Feather believes, isn't it? About you being a spirit, a walker. Sarah nodded. Dr. Harrison says it's about how I interpret my experiences, but I'm not sure what to think. With methodical precision, Emma completed her notation before giving Sarah her full attention. My grandmother would have called it second sight, the ability some gain after brushing death or witnessing something beyond ordinary experience. She spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing something as mundane as weather patterns. In her Irish village, such people were both respected and feared. You believe in such things? Sarah asked, surprised. Emma had always struck her as thoroughly practical, grounded in observable reality. I believe in allowing for mysteries, Emma replied. The world contains more than we can explain, Sarah. Demanding rational accounts for every occurrence limits understanding rather than expanding it. She smiled, a hint of mischief lightening her usually composed expression. Besides, even Robert, with all his scientific training, keeps a lucky coin in his medical bag. This revelation delighted Sarah. Does he really? Found on a battlefield during the war. Claims it's merely sentimental, but I notice he touches it before difficult procedures. Emma's expression grew more serious. The point is, Sarah, you've survived something terrible. If understanding that survival through Eagle Feather's framework brings meaning or purpose, there's wisdom in considering it. But what if it's not? Just a framework? What if something did happen when I hid under my mother's body, when I was surrounded by death but didn't die myself? Emma considered this question with the same respectful attention she gave to all Sarah's inquiries. Then, perhaps you have a responsibility to understand that something on its own terms, not a superstition to be dismissed, nor as divine intervention to be unquestioningly accepted, but as experience to be integrated into your understanding of yourself and the world. Their conversation was interrupted by commotion outside, horses approaching at speed, men calling out to the sentries. Emma rose immediately. "That sounds like Captain Miller's company," she said, moving toward the door. "Perhaps news from the fort." Sarah followed, emerging onto the trading house. Porch as riders entered the compound. Captain Miller dismounted, accompanied by a civilian Sarah didn't recognize, a slender man in Eastern clothing, looking distinctly uncomfortable after what had clearly been a long journey. Dr. Harrison emerged from his makeshift clinic, greeting the captain with a questioning expression. "Trouble?" Miller shook his head. "Potential resolution, actually." He gestured toward his companion. "This is Mr. James Holloway from the Indian Affairs Bureau. He's been dispatched to investigate the Whitman Creek massacre and subsequent events." The bureaucrat stepped forward, extending a hand that Harrison shook perfunctorily. "Dr. Harrison, I've been briefed on your involvement in these matters, and this must be..." His gaze shifted to Sarah, still bearing traces of walnut stain on her skin and dressed in the practical, frontier clothing Emma had adapted for her. "The Mitchell girl?" Sarah nodded, studying the newcomer with the careful assessment she'd developed since Whispering Valley. "Yes, sir." "Remarkable," Holloway murmured. "Captain Miller has shared your account of events. Most extraordinary. I'd very much like to hear it directly, if you're willing." Dr. Harrison's protective instincts visibly surfaced. "Sarah has provided multiple statements already, Mr. Holloway. Reliving these experiences repeatedly serves little purpose." "On the contrary," Holloway countered smoothly, "her unique perspective may prove crucial to our negotiations." "Negotiations?" Emma questioned. Captain Miller interjected. "Representatives from peaceful Kiowa bands have approached Fort Williams seeking talks. They're distancing themselves from Broken Lance's actions, requesting government recognition of their separate status." "And what does this have to do with Sarah?" Harrison asked. "Her testimony regarding Eagle Feather's intervention supports their claim that not all Kiowa participated in or sanctioned the attacks," Holloway explained. "Additionally, we have reports that Broken Lance's influence has indeed diminished following his failure here at Riverstone. Several sub-chiefs have withdrawn their warriors from his band." Sarah absorbed this information, connecting it to Eagle Feather's prediction about the war chief losing power. "What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Holloway?" The bureaucrat's expression suggested he wasn't accustomed to such direct questioning from children. "Initially, just your account. Eventually, perhaps your presence at the negotiations themselves, as living evidence of both the tragedy perpetrated by hostile elements and the humanity demonstrated by others." "Out of the question," Harrison stated flatly. "Sarah is not a political symbol to be paraded before officials." "With respect, Doctor, these negotiations could prevent further bloodshed," Holloway persisted. Surely that outweighs temporary discomfort. It's not your place to determine that equation for a child under our guardianship, Emma interjected, her normally gentle tone hardened by maternal protectiveness. Sarah listened to these adults discussing her fate, remembering similar conversations in Pine Creek Settlement when decisions about the wagon train were being made. Then, her opinion had not been sought. Now, she recognized the opportunity to assert agency in matters that concerned her directly. "I'll speak with Mr. Holloway," she announced, interrupting the increasingly heated exchange. "But I make no commitment regarding negotiations until I understand more about what's involved." 3 surprised faces turned toward her. Holloway, clearly pleased, the Harrisons concerned but respectful of her decision. Captain Miller merely nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less from the girl who had survived a massacre and faced down Broken Lance's warriors. "A reasonable compromise," Holloway conceded. "Perhaps we could begin tomorrow, after you've had time to prepare yourself." "There's one condition," Sarah added, her expression resolute. "Eagle Feather must be included in any negotiations that involve me. If he recovers," she amended, the qualification painful but necessary given his condition. Holloway's enthusiasm visibly dampened. "That presents certain complications. As a medicine man associated with traditional practices, he saved my life," Sarah interrupted. "Twice. Without him, there would be no testimony to support your negotiations." Captain Miller suppressed what might have been a smile. "The girl has a point, Holloway. Including Eagle Feather could actually strengthen your position with the peaceful bands. He's respected among them." The bureaucrat yielded with reluctance, wrapped in diplomatic phrasing. "I'll certainly take your request under advisement. Now, if someone could show me to suitable accommodations, the journey has been rather taxing." As Miller led Holloway toward the repaired guest quarters, Emma placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "That was well handled," she said quietly. "But are you certain you're prepared to revisit these events again?" Sarah watched the government man's retreating figure. Some stories need retelling until people actually hear them, until they change something. Harrison studied her with a mixture of pride and concern. "Just remember, you can stop at any point. Your well-being matters more than any negotiation." "I know," Sarah assured him, "but Eagle Feather was right. Survival comes first, then something more. Maybe this is the more part." The following morning found Sarah seated across from James Holloway in what had once been the Trading Post manager's office. The bureaucrat had arranged papers before him and positioned his chair to catch the best light through the room's single window. His meticulous preparation contrasted sharply with Sarah's straightforward approach. She simply sat, hands folded, in her lap, waiting for questions. "I appreciate your willingness to speak with me," Holloway began, dipping his pen in an inkwell. "I understand how difficult recounting such experiences must be." Sarah neither confirmed nor denied this assumption. "What exactly do you need to know, Mr. Holloway? Let's start at the beginning, the departure from Pine Creek Settlement, your family's reasons for joining the wagon train." With calm detachment that belied her age, Sarah described the events, leading to the massacre, her father's decision to seek better opportunities, the journey's early days, the attack itself. She spoke without embellishment or emotional flourish, presenting facts as she had experienced them. Holloway's pen scratched across paper, occasionally pausing as he formulated follow-up questions. "And you survived by hiding beneath your mother's body? For how long?" "Until nightfall. Then another group came. Broken Lance's warriors returning?" "No, different warriors. Eagle Feather and his men. They were checking for survivors, not looking for valuables. Sarah maintained steady eye contact, ensuring Holloway recorded this critical distinction. And this eagle feather, he took you from the massacre site directly to Riverstone trading post. Yes, he traveled mainly at night, avoiding open areas. He said it would be safer for everyone that way. Holloway made another notation. Did he explain why he helped you when his fellow tribesmen had killed your family? Sarah's expression hardened slightly. They weren't his fellow tribesmen any more than murderers in St. Louis would be your fellow citizens, Mr. Holloway. Eagle. Feather made it clear that Broken Lance's band had rejected peaceful coexistence. They don't represent all Kiowa, just as the men who sometimes attack Indian villages don't represent all settlers. The bureaucrat blinked at this rebuke, adjusting his spectacles. A fair distinction. Please continue. For nearly 2 hours, Sarah answered questions, clarified details, and occasionally corrected Holloway's assumptions. She described Eagle Feather's return with warnings about Broken Lance's planned attack, the battle at Riverstone, and the medicine man's intervention that somehow prevented warriors from seeing her despite looking directly at her hiding place. At this last account, Holloway's skepticism became apparent. You're suggesting some sort of invisibility, a magical concealment. I'm telling you what happened, Sarah replied evenly. They looked where I was hiding and didn't see me. Eagle. Feather called it old medicine that makes eyes see what minds expect. Perhaps you were simply well hidden, or the warrior's search was perfunctory. Sarah shook her head. Broken Lance himself looked under the cot. His hand passed inches from my face. He was searching thoroughly. Holloway's pen hesitated above the paper. Miss Mitchell, while I don't doubt your sincerity, such supernatural elements might undermine the credibility of your otherwise valuable testimony. You asked for my account, Mr. Holloway. I've given it truthfully. Which parts you choose to believe or include in your report is your decision. The bureaucrat studied her with growing curiosity. You're remarkably composed for someone your age, especially given your experiences. Sarah offered no response to this observation, having learned that adults often interpreted children's composure as either precocious wisdom or emotional damage, depending on their own preconceptions. Well, Holloway continued, organizing his notes, I believe I have sufficient information for preliminary discussions with the Kiowa representatives. Should formal negotiations proceed, we can discuss your potential participation then. And Eagle Feather's inclusion. As I mentioned yesterday, that presents certain challenges. The Bureau prefers to work with tribal leaders who have embraced progressive policies. Traditional medicine men sometimes complicate matters with their adherence to old ways. Sarah recognized the diplomatic evasion for what it was. Eagle Feather saved a child from a hostile tribe when doing so endangered him. He warned Riverstone of an impending attack at personal cost. Those actions seem fairly progressive to me, Mr. Holloway. Before the bureaucrat could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Voices raised in alarm, running footsteps on the trading post's packed earth yard. Sarah rose immediately, moving to the window. A rider was entering the gates at speed, uniform, identifying him as one of the soldiers from Fort Williams. Dr. Harrison emerged from the infirmary, intercepting the messenger. Though Sarah couldn't hear their exchange, the doctor's expression transformed from concern to shock. He immediately turned toward the administrative building where she and Holloway were conducting their interview. Something's happened, Sarah said, already moving toward the door. She reached the yard just as Harrison approached, his face grave. Broken Lance is dead, he announced without preamble. Dead? Holloway repeated, following Sarah outside. How? Military action? Harrison shook his head. Killed by his own sub-chiefs during a council meeting. Apparently there was disagreement about future raids. The messenger says 3 factions have emerged from his band. One seeking peace talks, one joining different renegade groups, one simply returning to traditional lands. While the adults processed this development, Sarah found herself strangely unsurprised. Eagle Feather had predicted the war chief's decline, though perhaps not its violent culmination. She turned automatically toward the infirmary, where the medicine man still fought for his own life, wondering if somehow he already knew. "This changes everything," Holloway declared, excitement underlying his professional demeanor. "With Broken, Lance eliminated moderates within the Kiowa bands will have greater influence. The negotiations can proceed from a position of strength." Captain Miller, who had joined them upon hearing the commotion, offered a more measured assessment. "It also means scattered warriors with nothing to lose, Holloway. Leaderless fighters often become more dangerous, not less." As the men debated strategic implications, Sarah slipped away, returning to Eagle Feather's sick room. The medicine man lay as she had left him earlier, unnaturally still, skin stretched taut over prominent cheekbones, breath shallow but persistent. She took her accustomed place beside him, observing the almost imperceptible rise and fall of his chest. "Broken Lance is dead," she told him, unsure whether he could hear. "Killed by his own warriors during a council." For several minutes, no response came. Then, so subtly she might have imagined it, Eagle Feather's lips curved in the faintest smile. His eyes remained closed, but his right hand moved slightly on the blanket, fingers extending toward her. Sarah placed her hand over his. "Did you know?" she asked softly. "Is this what you meant about his path growing harder?" The medicine man's fingers twitched beneath hers, not quite a squeeze, but deliberate contact nonetheless. His lips parted, a single word emerging in a breath barely audible: "Justice." Sarah sat with him through the afternoon, as excitement coursed through Riverstone. Holloway and Captain Miller dispatched messengers to Fort Williams and the territorial capital. Soldiers discussed reassignments. Settlers speculated about improved security. The death of one man, a man Sarah had glimpsed only once as he searched for her beneath Eagle Feather's cot, had transformed the trajectory of an entire region. As twilight gathered, Emma brought supper to the sick room, setting a plate beside Sarah. "You should eat," she encouraged gently. "You've had a demanding day." "He's responding more," Sarah reported, ignoring the food. "He said justice when I told him about Broken Lance." Emma checked Eagle Feather's forehead, her nursing experience evident in the practiced motion. "The fever's broken," she confirmed. "Robert thought there was improvement this morning. This is encouraging. Will he recover now?" "It's still too early to be certain," Emma cautioned. "But this is a positive sign." She studied Sarah's face, noting the shadows beneath her eyes. "You need rest yourself. I can sit with him a while." Sarah shook her head. "I want to be here if he wakes properly. There are things I need to ask him. About being a spirit walker?" "About what comes next," Sarah clarified. "Now that Broken Lance is gone. Now that everything's changing again." Emma settled into a chair opposite Sarah, recognizing the girl's need for companionship even as she maintained her vigil. "Some might say your role in this story is complete, Sarah. You survived. You testified. The threat is removed." "It doesn't feel complete," Sarah confessed. "It feels like something just beginning." "Perhaps it is," Emma acknowledged. "Life rarely provides neat endings, only transitions from one chapter to another." They sat together in companionable silence as darkness enveloped Riverstone Trading. Outside their small room, plans were being made, futures being reimagined in the wake of Broken Lance's death. Inside, two females of different generations from different worlds shared quiet communion beside a medicine man who bridged multiple realities, each sensing that whatever transformations lay ahead, they would face them connected by threads both visible and unseen. Shortly after midnight, Eagle Feather opened his eyes fully for the first time in days. He looked directly at Sarah, recognition and awareness evident in his gaze. "You've returned," he said. his voice weak but clear. Sarah smiled, tears threatening despite her determined composure. "I never left." The medicine man nodded slightly, as if this confirmation aligned with some deeper understanding. Good, much yet to teach, much yet to learn. "About being a spirit walker, about being Sarah," he corrected gently, "who walked through death but carries life." Emma, who had dozed in her chair, awakened at their voices. Noting Eagle Feather's improved condition, she slipped out to notify her husband, leaving them momentarily alone. "Broken Lance is gone," Sarah said again, ensuring he understood. "Yes, his path ended where violence always leads." Eagle Feather's gaze remained steady on her face. "Your path continues, different now." "Different how?" "You carry two worlds inside now, settler child, spirit walker, both true." His hand moved to touch the blue stone amulet she still wore. "Some will fear this, some will seek to use it. You must learn to be both without losing either." Before Sarah could question further, Dr. Harrison entered, professional assessment immediately overtaking personal relief at his patient's improvement. As he examined the medicine man, Sarah pondered Eagle Feather's words, recognizing the profound truth in his observation. She had indeed become a bridge between worlds, not merely white and Kiowa, but between conventional understanding and experiences that defied easy explanation. Whatever path stretched before her following this night, she would walk it carrying multiple realities within her. The girl who had hidden beneath her mother's body in Whispering Valley, and the young woman who had faced Broken Lance unseen. The orphaned settler adapting to life at Riverstone Trading Post, and the spirit walker who had glimpsed mysteries beyond ordinary perception. As Eagle Feather had said, both were true. Her task now was learning to live with that truth in a world that preferred simpler stories. Spring came to Riverstone Trading Post with unexpected gentleness, coaxing wildflowers from soil that had absorbed blood months earlier. 2 seasons had passed since Broken Lance's death, bringing changes both subtle and profound to the frontier settlement and its inhabitants. The trading post itself had been fully rebuilt, structures rising from ashes with stronger foundations and more deliberate design. Additional families had arrived as news spread of peaceful resolutions, with local tribes swelling Riverstone's population enough to justify a small schoolhouse constructed at the settlement's eastern edge. Sarah Mitchell, now 13, stood on a hill overlooking this transformation, the morning sun warming her face as she closed her eyes in quiet meditation. Eagle Feather had taught her this practice during his extended recovery, the art of listening beyond hearing, sensing beyond seeing. In these moments of stillness, she sometimes caught whispers of what the medicine man called the world behind the world, fleeting impressions that defied conventional explanation. "You're getting better at quieting your thoughts," a voice observed from behind her. Sarah smiled without opening her eyes, having sensed Eagle Feather's approach before he spoke. "Some days. Others, my mind still chatters like Pine Creek's gossips." The medicine man chuckled, the sound far healthier than anyone might have predicted during his precarious convalescence. Though he would always bear scars from Broken Lance's warriors, Eagle Feather had recovered his strength through a combination of Dr. Harrison's medical care and his own traditional healing practices. He now divided his time between his people's settlement and Riverstone, serving as an unofficial liaison between communities previously separated by suspicion. "The treaty signing is today," he reminded her, seating himself on a sun-warmed rock. "Many important faces coming." Sarah opened her eyes, turning to study her mentor. Eagle Feather had braided his grey-streaked hair and wore a combination of traditional Kiowa clothing and settler items. Buckskin leggings paired with a trade cloth shirt, his medicine pouch hanging prominently around his neck. The blue stone, Amulet's twin, she noticed, as she touched her own still worn beneath her dress collar. "Are you nervous?" she asked. He shook his head. "Treaties are just words on paper. True peace lives in actions, in understanding. That work continues after signatures dry." The treaty he referenced represented months of negotiation between territorial authorities and representatives from peaceful Kiowa bands. Following Broken Lance's death, the factional divisions Eagle Feather had predicted had indeed emerged. Some warriors joining other resistance groups further west, but many more returning to traditional encampments, weary of conflict that had brought their people little beyond suffering. James Holloway, initially sent merely to investigate the Whitman Creek massacre, had recognized opportunity in this fragmentation. With surprising adaptability for a government bureaucrat, he had solicited input from both settler communities and tribal leaders, eventually drafting an agreement that established protected territories, regulated trading practices, and included provisions for addressing grievances before they escalated to violence. Sarah's testimony had proven crucial to these negotiations, though not precisely as Holloway had initially envisioned. Rather than serving as merely symbolic evidence of atrocity, she had participated actively in discussions, sometimes translating cultural concepts between parties when conventional language failed. Her unique position, having witnessed both, the worst violence and the most profound compassion across cultural divisions, lent her perspective unexpected weight despite her youth. "Mr. Holloway says I should wear my best dress for the ceremony," Sarah mentioned, plucking absently at a wildflower beside the path. Emma stayed up late, adding new trim. Eagle Feather observed her thoughtfully. "You are torn about today." Not a question, but a statement, reflecting his uncanny ability to sense emotional undercurrents. Sarah nodded, abandoning pretense with this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and her most resilient. "Part of me feels like we're celebrating something built on my family's deaths," she admitted, "as if their sacrifice somehow made this peace possible, which makes it both precious and wrong." "Ah." Eagle Feather nodded slowly. "You fear dishonoring their memory by finding good that grew from terrible soil." "Yes, exactly that." The medicine man considered his response carefully, respecting the weight of her concern. "My grandmother told story of great fire that destroyed forest when she was young. Everything burned. Trees, animals, plants. Nothing but ash remained." He gestured toward the vibrant landscape surrounding them. Next spring, new growth came. Different plants, stronger, not because fire was good, but because life finds way forward even through destruction. Sarah absorbed this parable, recognizing the wisdom embedded within its simplicity. "So, honoring my family doesn't mean staying in grief forever. They gave you life twice," Eagle Feather affirmed. "First in your birth, then in your mother's final protection. Best honor is to carry that life forward with purpose." They sat in companionable silence as the sun climbed higher. In the distance, Riverstone stirred with unusual activity, territorial officials arriving, delegations from both settler communities and Kiowa bands gathering for the signing ceremony. Dr. Harrison had insisted the event occur at the trading post rather than a government facility, emphasizing neutral ground where all parties could meet as equals. "I should go back," Sarah said eventually. "Emma will be looking for me, and Dr. Harrison wanted to review my statement before the ceremony." "One moment more," Eagle Feather requested, reaching into his medicine pouch. He withdrew a small object, wrapped in soft hide. "For you, for today." Sarah accepted the package, unwrapping it carefully to reveal a delicately crafted bracelet. Thin strips of leather interwoven with beadwork in patterns she recognized from Eagle Feather's teachings about Kiowa symbolism. At its center, a small polished stone matched the blue amulet she wore around her neck. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her finger over the intricate beading. "More than ornament," Eagle Feather explained. "Marks you as someone who walks between worlds, not caught between, but belonging to both." He helped her secure it around her wrist. "My people will recognize its meaning. Some settlers too, those who understand old ways." Sarah studied the gift, recognizing it as something beyond a mere trinket, a visible declaration of her unique identity, neither fully settler nor Kiowa, but something integration of both experiences. "Thank you," she said simply, words inadequate. "For the deeper significance of the gesture." Eagle Feather nodded, satisfied. "Go now, prepare for ceremony. I join later." When Sarah returned to the Harrisons' cabin, now expanded with an additional bedroom and larger kitchen, she found Emma waiting with undisguised anxiety. "There you are. I was about to send Robert searching. The territorial governor arrived early, and Mr. Holloway has been asking for you." Emma's hands fluttered over Sarah's wind-blown hair. "We need to get you ready." Sarah submitted to Emma's ministrations with patient amusement, understanding the older woman's nervous excitement. For Emma and Robert Harrison, today represented vindication of principles they had upheld despite criticism from fellow settlers who advocated harsher approaches to Native American relations. Their guardianship of Sarah and treatment of Eagle Feather had initially marked them as controversial figures. Now, those same actions were being celebrated as foundational to newfound stability. As Emma helped her into the carefully prepared dress, blue calico with white lace trim, complementing Sarah's eyes and highlighting the transition from child to young woman, Sarah caught glimpses of her reflection in the small mirror propped on the bureau. The face, looking back, showed traces of the girl who had left Pine Creek Settlement nearly a year earlier, but with subtle changes that reflected experiences beyond her chronological age. Her eyes held a depth uncommon in youth, her composure suggesting someone accustomed to navigating complex circumstances. "You look lovely," Emma declared, securing the final buttons. Her expression softened as she noticed the bracelet on Sarah's wrist. "Eagle Feather's work?" Sarah nodded. "A gift for today." Emma examined it with genuine appreciation. Exquisite craftsmanship. "The patterns remind me of the designs in his medicine bundle." She glanced up, meeting Sarah's eyes. "He sees something special in you, Sarah. Robert and I do too." Before Sarah could respond, a knock at the door announced Dr. Harrison's arrival. He entered wearing his good suit, spectacles freshly polished, beard neatly trimmed. "Quite the gathering." "Forming," he reported. "Representatives from 4 settlements, 3 Kiowa bands, territorial officials, even a journalist from back east." His gaze landed on Sarah, approval warming his expression. "You look prepared to make history, young lady." Sarah smoothed her skirt nervously. "I'm only saying a few words." "Few but significant," Harrison corrected gently. "Your statement helps frame this treaty not as government imposition, but as community-driven reconciliation." He adjusted his cuffs with uncharacteristic fidgeting. "Are you comfortable with the remarks you've prepared?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "They're simple but honest. Eagle Feather says that's what matters most." Harrison nodded, satisfied. "Then I believe we're ready, shall we?" The ceremony took place in the trading post's central yard, transformed for the occasion, with benches arranged in a circle rather than hierarchical rows. A table centered this arrangement, bearing the treaty document with spaces for multiple signatures. James Holloway stood nearby, conferring with the territorial governor and military representatives, while Kiowa leaders gathered opposite, their formal attire reflecting the occasion's significance. Sarah took her designated place beside the Harrisons, aware of curious glances from visitors unfamiliar with her role in recent events. Emma squeezed her hand reassuringly as Eagle Feather entered the gathering, acknowledging Sarah with a dignified nod before joining his people. The proceedings began with formal introductions and statements from officials outlining the treaty's provisions. Sarah listened attentively, noting how Holloway's language had evolved during negotiations. Terms like savages and primitives replaced by tribal representatives and indigenous communities. Small semantic shifts, perhaps, but reflecting broader recalibration of perspectives. When called upon to speak, Sarah approached the center of the circle, conscious of all eyes upon her. She had declined Holloway's offer to write remarks for her preferring authenticity over polish. Standing before the assembled dignitaries, she touched the blue stone amulet beneath her collar, drawing strength from its connection to both her survival and Eagle Feather's guidance. "My name is Sarah Mitchell," she began, her voice clear despite her youth. "1 year ago, I watched my family die during the Whitman Creek Massacre. I survived by hiding beneath my mother's body until discovered by a Kiowa medicine man named Eagle Feather, who brought me safely to Riverstone Trading Post instead of taking my life." A murmur rippled through the assembly at this direct reference to tragedy. Sarah continued, her gaze moving between settler and Kiowa representatives. "I have known cruelty and kindness from both peoples represented here today. I have seen how violence breeds only more violence, and how individual choices to show compassion can break that cycle." She touched the bracelet on her wrist. "Eagle Feather taught me that I now walk between two worlds, not caught between them, but connecting them." She drew a deep breath, moving to her conclusion. This treaty isn't just about boundaries on maps or rules for trade. It's about recognizing that suffering falls on all sides of conflicts, and that peace requires seeing the humanity in those we've been taught to fear. My family cannot be brought back, neither can those lost in retaliations that followed, but their memories can guide us toward a different path. Sarah stepped back, returning to her place beside the Harrisons as a profound silence followed her. Words. Then, beginning with Eagle Feather and echoed by others across the circle, a soft tapping of hands against thighs, the Kiowa equivalent of applause, spread through the gathering. Settler representatives joined with conventional clapping, creating a symphony of appreciation that bridged cultural expressions. The treaty signing proceeded with newfound solemnity, each signatory seeming to recognize the human stakes beyond political considerations. When completed, Holloway announced the establishment of what would officially be recorded as the Riverstone Accord, though local settlers and tribal members would later refer to it simply as Sarah's Peace. As formal proceedings concluded and attendees dispersed into smaller conversational groups, Sarah found herself approached by the journalist who had traveled from Eastern Territories to document the event. "Miss Mitchell," he began eagerly, notebook in hand, "your story is remarkable. Readers back east would be fascinated by a first-hand account of your experiences. Would you consider allowing me to publish your narrative?" Before Sarah could respond, Eagle Feather appeared beside her, his presence both protective and grounding. "Some stories belong to those who lived them," he observed quietly, "to be shared when and how they choose." The journalist looked between them, visibly intrigued by their evident connection. "Of course, I meant no presumption. It's simply that yours is exactly the kind of account that might help Eastern readers understand frontier realities beyond sensationalized reports." Sarah considered this perspective, recognizing its validity while maintaining boundaries around her experiences. "Perhaps someday," she allowed, "when I've had more time to understand the story myself." As the celebration continued around them, Dr. Harrison joined their small group, bringing news that would further shape Sarah's evolving path. "The territorial legislature has approved funding for a proper school here at Riverstone," he informed them, Given our unique position between communities, they've authorized an unusual provision: education for both settler and Kiowa children, with instruction in both languages and cultural traditions. Eagle Feather's expression revealed rare surprise. Bold vision, many will resist. Undoubtedly, Harrison agreed, which is why implementation will require individuals familiar with both worlds. His gaze settled meaningfully on Sarah. Not immediately, of course. You have your own education to complete first. But perhaps in time, a role exists there that builds upon your unique experiences. Sarah absorbed this possibility, not merely moving forward from tragedy, but potentially transforming it into a foundation for bridging divided communities. The path suggested aligned with Eagle Feather's teachings about her dual nature as both settler child and spirit walker, offering purpose that honored all dimensions of her journey. As twilight gathered over Riverstone Trading Post, Sarah stood once more on the hillside where she had begun her day, watching lanterns illuminate the continuing celebrations below. Eagle Feather joined her in companionable silence, both contemplating the significance of the day's events and possibilities stretching beyond the horizon. "Your parents would be proud," the medicine man observed finally, "not just of survival, of how you've carried life forward." Sarah nodded, tears threatening, but not falling. "I still miss them, every day, as you should. Grief doesn't end, it transforms." Eagle Feather gestured toward the stars emerging above. "Like those, always present, even when not seen." Together they stood between earth and sky, between past and future, between cultures long divided yet capable of connection. Sarah Mitchell, daughter, survivor, student, bridge, touched the blue stone at her throat and the beaded bracelet at her wrist, embracing the truth that her story would always contain both profound loss and unexpected purpose. Both endings and beginnings inseparably woven into the person she was becoming. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.